I am going to take the role of an optimist on today's show, and I am going to take a look at how the Dolphins can win the AFC East, which it would be the first time Miami won the AFC East since 2008. And this graphic is flat out depressing. It's hard for me to watch. Look at this. Look, unbelievable. One time in the last 20 years. And the Bills, after winning in 2024, have now done it 5 straight years. And obviously we know how dominant the Patriots were with Belichick and Brady in that time frame. But can the Dolphins snap that streak by the Buffalo Bills? It's certainly not going to be easy to dethrone the MVP Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. But I do think there could be a pathway for Miami to do it. Now, a lot of things have to go right, and we're going to take a look at some of those reasons here in a second. But before we get into that, make sure you follow us over on Instagram at Dolphins Today IG is our handle. We are posting more short-form content and other engaging posts in between our YouTube videos. So if you want more coverage on the Fins outside of YouTube, go follow us on Instagram at Dolphins Today IG is the handle. Reason number 1, if the Dolphins were to win the division, Tua Tagovailoa would have to play all 17 games. And there's really no ifs, ands, or buts about that. If he doesn't play 17, there's no chance the Dolphins win the division. Because the only chance Miami had to win the division in the last 5 or 6 years is when Tua played all 17 games in 2023. It was also the same year that Tua led the NFL in passing with 4,600 yards. Miami obviously got off to that blistering start, had the game against the Broncos where they scored 70 points, and then fumbled down the stretch and lost that game in Buffalo, which ultimately cost them the division, among some other choke jobs. So you are going to need Tua to play in all 17 games, a feat as the starter of this football team he has only done one time. Now, another reason why I feel a little bit optimistic about this, if he does play all 17 games, is the fact that he is just a flat-out winner when he is on the football field. Miami is 38-24 when he is starting for them since he has been drafted. That is a ridiculous rate. That is about 67% of the games. Having that high of a win rate is just appalling, honestly. And I saw someone in the comments the other day when I brought up this stat say that's not even good. That is the most mind-boggling thing of all time, to say 38-24 as a starter isn't good. How hard is it to win in the National Football League? It's not like Miami has had a dominating offense, or a dominating roster, I should say. So the fact that Tua and company, when he is playing on the football field, is able to get as many wins as they can, that's just terrific, and that's awesome. So, yes, playing all 17 games is an absolute must if the Dolphins do want to win the division. Reason number 2, it's because of the improved offensive line play for Miami and how the offense will be way more balanced. I think that's probably the number 1 reason that we're going to be honest. But just because I have to, it is Tua playing 17 games because it's clear that's not going to happen. But when you make the upgrades that you did at offensive line, going from Robert Jones to James Daniels, unbelievable upgrade. Going from Liam Eichenberg to Jonah Savaiinaea, unbelievable upgrade. Adding Daniel Brunskill, which I think is going to be a really good signing for the Miami Dolphins, is a good depth piece. I know there's sketchiness around Patrick Paul at left tackle, moving on from Teron Armstead as he retired. But I have to have faith in the young man. I really do. I think he's the X factor for this Dolphins offense as well when you look at it as a whole. The fact is this. Miami had the bottom 5 offensive line football last season. They were graded out as the 5th worst. They had the 4th worst pass block win rate and the 6th worst run block win rate. So they have nowhere but up to go. And when you get the upgrades that you have had from the interior offensive line with Daniels and Savaiinaea, I think this group can go from a bottom 5 NFL offensive line to league average or maybe above league average. Like Miami was one of the better offensive lines in 2023. They were able to run the ball very effectively. Achane had 800 yards as a rookie. Mostert had 1,000 yards and 16 touchdowns. Miami was a top 5 offense in football, and that's why they were able to win double-digit games. So, if they're able to bounce back and have a good offensive line this year, then we might be able to talk about an offense that's top 10 in the NFL. And maybe you can put together a top half offense and maybe one or two things break your way and then you win the division like we're talking about here. The point is this offense for Miami should be greatly improved. It should. Last year under Mike McDaniel was a disaster. They were top 10 in the NFL the first two seasons, 22 and 2023. But 2024 it was bottom 10 in the National Football League. Should be back in that top 10, at least top 15 range again this season. So, as we continue to talk about the chances of making the AFC division title ours again, I want you to rate the chances of it being possible for Miami. Scale it 1 to 100, the chances of the AFC residing in Miami. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. Reason number 3, we're going to flip it out to the defense now. This Dolphins pass rush has the chance to be absolutely phenomenal. Again, when I say phenomenal, I mean there is a world where I live in where the Dolphins have the best pass rush in football, numero uno. But I expect it to be top 10 regardless. Why is that? Well, Chop Robinson was fantastic last year as a rookie in the second half of the season. Jalen Phillips is returning after essentially missing all of last year. Bradley Chubb, who did miss all of last season, is back playing for the Dolphins. And then you also have some other guys on the interior. Your front seven projects to be very, very good. But I want to touch on Chop Robinson because there's a world that I live in, and I feel like I've used that phrase a lot today, that Chop Robinson, after his second season, is looked at as a top 5 edge rusher in all of football. I mean, once he got the kinks out, once he really started to understand the speed, the physicality of NFL football on a week-to-week basis, he was a top 5 edge rusher in the NFL. In the second half of the year, he was the 7th highest graded pass rusher. He had the 4th most pressures, the 4th most QB hurries, the 3rd best pass rush win rate. And when you look at PFF's PRP, which is their signature pass rush stat, he was graded out as an 11.0, which is the 3rd best grade. The only players that he trailed last season were guys like Myles Garrett, Micah Parsons, and Max Crosby. So, if Chop Robinson is able to build off what he did in the second half of last year and do that for a full season, alongside guys like Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb returning, you can't even forget about the interior defensive linemen you have, like Zach Sealer and Kenneth Grant. Sealer last season had 10 sacks. Back-to-back years for him having double-digit sacks. You drafted Kenneth Grant, 13th overall, to be a versatile 3-tech, 1-tech hybrid in the middle of that defense. I just have to imagine that the Dolphins will have a really good pass rush. And what is something that is non-negotiable in the National Football League? You have to be good in the trenches, both defensively and offensively. Think about what happened with the Eagles this past season. Best offensive line, best defensive line. Oh, they won the Super Bowl. Do I think Miami has the best on both? No, but I do think Miami will have, when we look back at it a year from now, a top half offensive line and a top 10 defensive line. And if that's the case, the Miami Dolphins will be a winning football team who might not just win 9 or 10 games and sneak into the playoffs, but maybe they do win the AFC East. The point is, when you think about this defense, the front will have to carry. And I don't hate this mentality, and I think I would rather build through the trenches and leave my defensive secondary kind of hanging in a limbo, if you will, which is where it is right now. But if you can't consistently generate pressure on the quarterback at a very high level, and QBs consistently have time to throw the football, this secondary will be picked apart. So Miami is really banking on Chop, Jalen, Bradley dominating on the outside, Sealer and Kenneth Grant being menaces on the inside. And if that is the case, I think Miami's defense will be top half in the NFL. With a top 10 offense, we're cooking with gas, folks. We're going to round out the show here in a second, but if you want more coverage on the Miami Dolphins, Dolphins Today by Chat Sports is the channel for you. As we get into the preseason in August and September, we're going to start to put out 2 videos every single day. Subscribe, turn on notifications so you don't ever miss any content we put out. Reason number 4, and the final reason I'll talk about on today's show. If you look at the landscape of the NFL, and I know not everybody feels this way, but I do, the Miami Dolphins still have a top 5 weaponry, if you will, in the National Football League. What is considered weapons? Wide receivers, running backs, tight ends. Well, when you look at the top 6 that Miami has, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are an elite duo. Devon Achane was one of the most efficient running backs last season. Jalen Wright is primed for a big step up in his second year. And the signing of Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, I don't think can go under the radar anymore. NWI, 6'2", 211, had 8 touchdowns last season. One of the highest touchdown percentages in the National Football League, and will be a red zone threat. And I put Darren Waller on the list. That might be optimism. But if Miami feels like they can get 60% of Darren Waller that was playing in 2019 and 2020, that's a damn good tight end. It's going to be hard to defend them all, man. Like, how are NFL teams going to stop the Dolphins' offense when they have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle on the outside, Devon Achane and Jalen Wright in the backfield, Darren Waller over the middle of the field, and we talked about it earlier with the offensive line improvements, a top half offensive line football where Tua actually has time to throw, and they are a good run blocking offensive line as well. It's tough to defend all of them, man. And I'll be honest, I don't think they will. Like, it's tough to, and they won't. Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill both had under 1,000 yards last season. That will not be the case again this year. It will not be the case. But there's another meaning to why I said I still don't think they will. And it's because I still don't think they'll win the division. So I was an optimist this entire video. I laid out the 4 reasons why Miami could and what needs to happen for them to win the division. All 4 things that I say come to fruition and it goes well for Miami. I just don't see the Dolphins unseating Buffalo, man. Because even with the Dolphins really getting that next step, the Buffalo Bills are clearly better. And I hate to say this. To me, it would take a substantial issue or injury, yeah, that's the right word, to Josh Allen for Miami to be able to win the division. I don't see it happening. Why? Because Josh Allen doesn't miss games. So unless an injury out of the ordinary happens to Josh Allen, which I don't hope it does, I don't root for injuries with anyone. If he's quarterbacking the Buffalo Bills for 17, 16 games like he does all the time, I see them winning 12, 13 games. And even with all of those things that I just said about Miami happening, Tua playing 17, the improved O-line, the pass rush, the weaponry, I still don't think Miami will be able to get to 12 or 13 wins. They could get to 10 or 11, but that's not going to be good enough to unseat Buffalo. So there's a pathway to success, but it is very unlikely, and I don't see it happening. But if it does, remember why, because I think it will be because of what we've talked about on this video. That'll do it for today's show. Appreciate everybody joining us on this episode of Dolphins Today. I thought this was a fun, optimistic video to make. We're going to continue to have you covered every single day with Dolphins training camp news and rumors. So join the channel and follow me on Twitter/X for more at Nic_Rohloff.